everybody. So I am back today with another video. It has been a long time coming making a video, and it has also been a long time coming for me to be filming this video in particular. This is going to be my labor and delivery story of Dominic. Pretty much every time I tried to film this video prior to now, well, I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but I have cried. It was just a very emotional thing for me. And I might cry in this video. I'm gonna try not to. I try not to cry in public, but you know, it may happen, so I have a box of tissues just in case. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and share my story. He's not with me today. He's actually downstairs with my husband because I figured I needed to go ahead and get all of this out and I needed to be able to think. So, because it's been 4 months ago. He will be back for his 4-month update and a bunch of other updates for this channel. So I'm very excited to start putting videos back up on this. Let me just go ahead and get started. All right, so at 37 weeks, I went to the doctor and I had told the doctor, and I told you guys that he had some decreased movement. They put me on a stress test. They said everything was okay. They knew that he wasn't moving like he used to, but they couldn't identify anything being a problem. I, as a mother, just knew that something was not right. So I ended up going in on the 11th of September. Just bit my lip. I ended up going in on the 11th of September and I had my membrane stripped. Now, there's a lot of controversy around whether or not you should or should not do that. With Declan, they did it and I went into labor 32 hours later. It did not work with Dominic. It did not, initiate my labor. It did not start anything. It did not get anything going. It was just painful and unnecessary. So it didn't work that time, but that was okay. So on the 13th, it was Friday the 13th, and I started having contractions in the morning, and they were quite like, I knew I was in labor. It was early, they were not painful, but because I had been in labor before, I knew that this was actual labor and it was just the beginning. Contractions all day long. At night, when my husband finally got home, I was like, you know what, I've just got to relax, I've got to get in the tub. I got in the tub, not even kidding you, 5 minutes in the tub, the contractions stopped or were completely gone. I got up Saturday morning. My birthday was going to be on Sunday, so I told my husband on Saturday that I wanted to go shopping, which he does never want to do with me. Never. I wanted to go to Bath & Body Works. They were having the 2 for $22 candle sale, and I had to hit that up. So he took me to the mall. We took the other 2 boys. I came in from the mall and lost my vision for a split second. Completely could not see, and then my vision was basically like tunneled vision. It was very bizarre. Everything was kind of black except for directly what was in front of me, but I had no feelings like I was gonna faint or anything like that. And then I just kept seeing spots, and it was very, I had no peripheral vision after that. Like, I just completely lost my peripheral vision. So it made me a little nervous because I thought, oh, maybe I have preeclampsia, even though I have the lowest blood pressure on the face of the earth. My blood pressure, like, if it goes above 100, like, something's wrong with me. I ended up going to the doctor that night and having them check me out, and everything was fine. There was still decreased movement. However, they didn't seem to think that that was a cause for concern at that time. Nothing was, showing up as, wrong. My contractions were registering on the monitor, but they were like nothing that they would keep me for. You know what I mean? They were like, in a scale of 1 to 10, they were like a 1. So I went home. I was still having contractions. I walked for a little bit with my mom, and the contractions got very strong. They were 4 minutes apart. They were lasting for about 30 to 40 seconds. And then I decided, I was like, I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to take a bath. Like, if this gets real, I need to be clean. So as soon as I got in the tub, they were gone. Nothing. All done. Good night. So I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. It was my birthday on Sunday, the 15th of September. And I remember thinking, I'm still pregnant. Like, I'm still pregnant. After all of that, the past 2 days, like, I am still pregnant. So my mom had taken the kids home with her that night, just in case anything had happened. And my husband took me for donuts, and I was, we drove up to where my mom lived, which was about 45 minutes away. And we spent the day up there, and I pretty much walked the entire day. Like, I just kept walking and walking, and I bounced on a yoga ball, and I just kept walking and walking and walking. And the only thing that I could tell you was that I felt exhausted, but I was walking so much, so that very well could be why I was, why that was happening. Anyway, and then I wasn't really having contractions. It was like nothing, absolutely nothing. I was like working hard, you know. So we brought the kids home. I came home, I took a shower, I took a bath, I got into bed. Around 11 o'clock that night, I told my husband, I was like, I just don't feel right. Like, I don't feel like I'm having contractions. I just don't feel right. I'm gonna go ahead and go to sleep. So I woke up at about 2:30 in labor. Full-blown labor, contractions, hardcore, back labor. Thought I was going to die. I immediately was starting to panic because the back labor with my son, my second son, was so bad, and I couldn't get an epidural until I was at a 7. The epidural slowed down my labor, so I can't, like, I have to wait until a little bit further. But I ended up having to wait till I was at a 7 before I got the epidural with my son with the back labor, and it was just insanely painful, worst pain I've ever known in my life. So I started to panic. I called the doctor. They were like, you know what, go ahead and come on in. I had group B strep. I had some discharge. So I knew it wasn't, my water didn't break, but it was more discharge than normal. So they were like, come on in and let's get you checked out. So my mom had come down. She had said the whole pregnancy that she didn't want to go to the hospital with us and she was going to stay with the kids. I knew that that was not going to be the case. I knew that the second I went into labor, she was going to be all over that like white on rice. And she was. She came marching up the stairs and was like, I'm going with you to hospital. Like, we know. Okay. So she went with us. So me and my husband and my mom headed over to the hospital probably around 5 at that point. I mean, I took my time. I took a shower. You know, I did what I had to do. I knew that they weren't going to keep me if I wasn't at least at a 5 or a 4. So I wasn't rushing. I got to the hospital. I was in triage for a while. They had an emergency C-section going on, and I was just being seen by the nurse in triage. Shortly after that, they moved me to a room. About 2.5 hours after that, they moved me to a room, and I was in for some serious trouble. The nurse basically asked me what I was here for today. Like, she just got out of nursing school. I must have been her first patient or something like that. She was like, what are you here for today? Like, lady, I'm 3 days away from my due date, or 2 days away from my due date at that point, and I'm in labor. Like, I know that this is it. So they hooked me up to the contraction monitor, and obviously I was in labor. It took them forever to come in and check me. And then the nurse that I had didn't want to check me because she was nervous. So they get another nurse to come in and check me. And by this point, my husband and my mother are losing it. My husband is literally about to like claw this woman's eyes out. Because she, at this point, she can't find somebody. So she comes back into the room and she attempts to check me. And she gets very nervous and has to scurry out of the room and bring somebody back in immediately. And another more, I guess, seasoned nurse came in and she checked me, and she basically said that my bag of water was bulging, and I didn't need my water to break at that point. They also wanted to get me hooked up on antibiotics and everything else because of the group E strep prior to my water breaking, if they could help it. So immediately they brought me into a room and got me checked in and got me hooked up to my antibiotics. And I was probably in there for about another 2 hours before I saw the anesthesiologist. I saw a nurse anesthetist as well as an anesthesiologist because of the adverse reaction that I had had to the anesthesia, to the epidural, during my second pregnancy. I had kind of lost my hearing and my blood pressure went down really, really, really low. So they were both in there and they stayed in there to make sure that everything went right. So I was doing pretty well at that point, and like I said, the anesthesiologist and the nurse anesthetist came in and they got me my epidural, and it was a little bad. The contractions were pretty bad at that point. I was about a 6.5, I think she said, you know, a 6 with some room, and it was hurting bad at that point. My back labor had moved. My mom had, I failed to mention this earlier, but my mom had put some lavender on my back and lavender essential oil, and on hot rags that she had made in a crock pot. We basically heated up some wet rags, like wrung out wet rags with lavender essential oil in a crock pot, and they were hot and they smelled amazing. But she put them on my back, and I did some of those cat arch things, and I'm not even kidding you, whatever happened, the baby moved and all my labor went into the front. So that was amazing. Hallelujah. It wasn't like getting an epidural with back labor, because that was really bad, but this was bearable at this point. So immediately they do the epidural, and once they put me back onto the bed, immediately I start feeling bad. Within about 30 seconds, I'm saying to the doctors, I'm feeling funny. and I'm sick, by the way. And I'm telling the doctors, like, I'm feeling funny. Like, funny how? And I was like funny. And then I started losing my vision. My blood pressure plummeted. My heart rate dropped. I didn't panic because I pretty much knew what was happening. They had to give me 3 shots of adrenaline. They had to keep me on oxygen at that point. Like, I could not take a deep breath. I was struggling to breathe on my own at that point. Now, that wasn't anybody's main concern because the baby was showing the same signs. Like, they had a special monitor on him. His alarm went off several different times, and they would come in and check and feel and whatever. So anyway, I just knew that, like, it wasn't right with me, and I knew that something wasn't right with the baby, but I did not know exactly what. They kept coming in and checking on him, on me. His monitor kept going off. Mine kept going off, and they obviously would have to come in and make sure that I was okay. It was basically because my pulse ox was not good. I was not able to breathe that deep on my own, so I didn't have enough oxygen in my blood. I didn't have enough. It was just bad. So I vomited pretty much the entire time that I was in labor, just because of what my body was going through. And literally by the time that, and that was around 10 o'clock in the morning, by the time that I got my epidural. So as the day progressed, I mean, I was literally exhausted, just exhausted. I was tired of vomiting. I was tired of feeling like crap. I mean, I was just tired, like every other woman in labor is tired. And around 5 o'clock, the midwife came in and she checked me and she was like, well, you're ready. We're going to give you, you know, the baby wasn't dropping. So she was like, we need to do something. And it has always worked for me to sit straight up for about 45 minutes and then the baby will descend. So I suggested that and she said, okay, sure, we'll try that. So at about 5 o'clock, I sat up all the way. And around 5:45, 5:50, she came back in to check me, or the nurse came back in to check me and was like, you're ready. So she's delivering another baby. She just finished up. She'll be in here in a few minutes. So she came in around 6 o'clock and, you know, they started prepping everything and getting all the big lights on. Feel like you're in a show. They got everything set up and got everything ready. And, you know, she talked to me for a few minutes about just, you know, whatever that she was going to talk to me about. We were going to get started. You know, it was like game time. So all the big lights came on and then it was time to start to push. So my mom was on one side, my husband was on the other, and I started to push. And she basically told me that the monitors were all going off. I'm sorry. So she basically told me that I had to get this baby out. I had 3 pushes minimum and I had to get him out. He was already too far descended for them to do anything at that point. I mean, they couldn't push him back up. But he needed to get out immediately. His blood pressure was like non-existent. It was so low. Mine was continuing to drop at that point. And the first push was fine. Immediately when he started to crown, she could see that he had the cord wrapped around his neck. I still needed to keep pushing because she couldn't get that cord off from his neck. Well, he continued to go into further distress, and they basically pushed my husband out of the way. They pushed my mother out of the way. They had people pushing me up to help me push and put me in a better position because, like I had said in my earlier videos, I had a lot of hip problems and I was having, plus I couldn't feel myself from the waist down. And they basically had people hold me up and push me up, and they had somebody else pushing in on my legs. She literally told me, like, this is it. You have to get his head and shoulders out now. And she was having me do like push, 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 all in one push. Not like one continuous long push, but just like, like, if that makes sense. And so she was like, we have to go for it now. We're going to get the rest of the head and the shoulders out in this. And you know, you don't, it's like an outer body experience when you can't breathe, you have an oxygen mask on, nobody around you that you know, because you're the way that you're positioned, you can't see your family. And they're like demanding stuff out of you. You don't know what's happening. Anyway, she got his shoulders out and then said, literally yelled at me to push one last time, and she popped his body out. Dominic had the cord wrapped around his neck twice. And he also had a true knot in his umbilical cord, which I will put a picture here. He had an abnormally long extension cord, which was why he was able to literally hop through it. And they say that babies that are very, very active tend to put their umbilical cord in a knot. And that at 37 weeks, when you feel decreased movement, that is the #1 indicator that the baby's cord has been put into a knot. Well, he was gray. He was lifeless. He didn't cry. He was born at 6/31. He was 8 pounds 6 ounces and 20 inches long. He was gray. He was lifeless. He kind of hung over like a wet noodle. He didn't cry. During my last push or two, I could hear them yelling for a NICU team stat. And not so much in that kind of NIC team stat. It was kind of like this scary, very scary sound. Hearing them call for the NICU is scary in and of itself. But when they're calling for it stat, it's kind of scary when you don't know what's going on. Anyway, basically, after everybody came in and checked him out and they cleared him for everything, he took a little while to want to eat. He took a little while to just kind of make any sounds, just kind of move around. You know, the normal things that the baby did. Obviously, they came in and checked on him every hour that night. And sometimes the nurses were in there every half an hour that night. I was a nervous wreck. Basically, they were saying that when they see this type of situation happen with the true knot and the cord being wrapped around the neck, if they catch it prior to labor, then they do a C-section because the baby can completely strangle themselves. And it was just something that was very hard for me to swallow, knowing that I went in and told them, like, I went in for an additional appointment. I wasn't at my regular doctor's appointment. I went in and told them, like, something is not right. The baby has decreased movement. They called me in. And it was just a very emotional time for me. And every time that I've tried to tell this story, it makes me cry. Not out of, like, sadness, but out of, like, joy that he's here. And he's so perfect. He's very perfect. Without getting, like, you know, without getting too personal or anything like that, I just really believe that God really had his hand on him, because he wasn't malnourished, he wasn't underweight. Anyway, that is Dominic's labor and delivery story. I am so sorry that I have been crying. I really tried not to cry, but I'm sorry. It's just very emotional for me to think, you know, just to think about it and think about what could have happened. It was a very emotional day for me. Like I said, when I did try to film this, I just couldn't pull it together. And it's definitely gotten a lot better now than what it was before. Literally before, when I started telling the story, I was crying the minute I got into it. So anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. You will see Dominic in 2 weeks. If you guys have any requests for videos or have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will either do a whole question and answer video, or I will just answer the questions in his 4-month update video, which I will be doing in about 2 weeks from now. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys being with me throughout my entire pregnancy and throughout my first few months of new mommyhood. It's so funny because even though you already have kids, each kid is different, and it's like you become a new mom over and over and over again. So it's been absolutely amazing. So thank you guys for sticking by me and being with me. I appreciate and love you all so very much, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.